Good morning, everybody. Here with Steve Gregg. We're taking him to the airport right now. He just put in an amazing week teaching Revelation in Jess's BCC, the Bible Core course here at YWAM Honolulu, and stayed pretty busy as well each evening. He said he had booked from people that had question and answers, right?
Mostly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Steve, thanks so much for being here and blessing the island of Oahu. I'd love to ask you some practical questions. You just released your 2-book set on the Kingdom of God, and I would just love to know what your writing process is from reading. How are you reading a book? How are you taking notes? And then how are you combining all of that to put out the work that you're putting out?
Yeah, well, this book project was quite different than previous ones, but I don't write a lot of books, and I never even start writing a book until I've done a lot of research on the subject and even taught on it many times. So it's not like I'm starting from scratch and have to start researching. It's, in many cases, I've done years of research and even taught for years on the subject before I put pen to paper, so to speak. But to a large extent, my books are sort of just like a flow of consciousness because my research has been done so many years previously, and however, in every case, whether I read the Revelation book or the Hell book or the 2-volume books on the Kingdom, once I start writing, I realize that I should do more reading about this. So even in the process of writing, I'm even purchasing books on the subject and scanning them, sometimes reading them thoroughly for anything of value that I might include. I'm kind of I don't write very many books, so I'm kind of OCD about wanting to make sure I leave nothing out of value. I could say a lot of things of value and leave many things out, and it'd probably still be an okay, helpful book to somebody. But I just figure if I'm going to write on this only once, I don't want to leave anything out that I will ever wish was in it. So I read lots of books. When I was writing the Revelation book, for example, I read about 12 commentaries from each view.
Wow.
So almost 50 commentaries. And while I was writing the Hell book, I read about 8 to 10 books from each view, from authors of each view. So about almost 25 books, and probably more than 25 books. And a lot of those books were read, of course, before I began, because they were part of my earlier research. But some of them I obtained even in the process of writing and ordered them on Amazon, and they'd arrive even while I'm writing my book, and I'd read them and write at the same time. Now, with the Kingdom of God books, it was quite different. I didn't have much research to do. I've taught on the Kingdom of God for almost 50 years, and the books are based largely on lecture series I've given, which I have notes to. It's an amazing thing to me because I intended for those books to be one book. I only wanted to write one book, and there were two natural parts: the conceptual part and the practical part. So I was going to have a book. I thought it'd be about the size of the Hell book, which is 300 pages, and there'd be part 1 and part 2, maybe a total of perhaps 20 chapters, but and that's pretty much like the Hell book size. But as I wrote, before I finished the first part, I was already past 300 pages. I realized, okay, I've got still more to do on this first part. I've got equally or more to do on the second. So I thought I really didn't want to, because I didn't want to burden the reader with too much. But I thought I'm going to make 2 books, and it's a little awkward having 2 books because it's hard to explain to people this is one book. Both books have the same title, and this is book 1 and book 2. So just in telling people about the books, it's sometimes a little confusing. Although, by the way, I will say this: the 2 books are now going to come out in 1 volume also. They'll continue to be available as individual books, but there'll be a rather large volume that'll have them combined.
Nice.
Soon available. But anyway, I amazed myself, actually, because I started writing at the beginning of the 2nd week of February in 2020, so a week into the month, and by the end of the month, the book was done.
Wow.
With the exception of 1 chapter, which I only later decided to add. It was not like I couldn't fit it in there. I didn't plan on that chapter initially, and I later added it. So with the exception of one, and there's 40 chapters altogether. And so I wrote 39 of those chapters and thought my book was complete, actually, in 3 weeks' time. But when I start writing, I don't do much of anything else. I actually would get up early in the morning, start writing every day. I'd interrupt it only for the radio program and get back to writing until bedtime. And so essentially every day I wrote all day. And as it turned out, it came to well over 800 pages of books. So, you know, my writing process it's really hard for me to get started writing a book. I thought about writing a book on the Kingdom of God. Well, I've probably been thinking about it for 20 years or more. And a number of people have told me I should, and I thought, yeah, well, I probably should, but getting around to it is hard, because I know that once I start, I'm not going to be able to do anything else for some weeks, usually, maybe months. Yeah, it was much quicker writing these books, which are longer, than it was writing either of the previous books. The Revelation book I wrote over a period of about 2 years. And the Hell book, I don't remember, but it took a few months anyway. And I was writing quite thoroughly then. But both of those books, of course, Revelation and the Hell books, they both required a lot of quotations from other people. So I had to do a lot of reading, had to find proper quotations to summarize what was being said. And those books were, of course, largely not to present what my view is, but what different people's views are. So they depended almost entirely on quotations from other people. In this case, I was writing my own views. And actually, after I finished the manuscript, I did continue to read other people's books on it, and I found a few quotes that I went back and stuck in. They were not necessary, but I thought they were helpful. So that's how I go about writing a book.
Nice.
I don't do it very often.
So with when you're sitting down with 8 to 10 commentaries on each view of a subject, are you doing that all in one sitting as well? So you said you wrote the book in 3 weeks. Are you doing all of that research in a condensed amount of time as well?
Actually, my research on at least the few books that I've written, the research would have to be said to have been stretched out over, in most cases, decades. You know, I mean, again, because I have been teaching on those particular subjects, I have been collecting data for a long time, including quotations from other people. But once you write a book that's supposed to be based on the quotations of who, you need to fill it out more. But like the 3 weeks I was writing this treatise on the Kingdom of God, I wasn't doing very much research at the same time, because my research had been done in the past. But as I say, after the manuscript was complete but not submitted yet, I read some more books, and I did find some worthwhile quotes to stick in there. With the Revelation book, that's the one I read like about 12 commentaries for each view. I actually wrote the whole commentary on each view separately. So it's not like I looked at Revelation 1 through 3, and wrote all 4 columns. I felt like that would be too confusing for me to do. And what I tried to do in the case of the Revelation book, I wanted to be totally focused on one view and be able to write it as if it was my own. I wanted to almost provisionally convince myself of that view from the arguments of the authors and represent them and string them together in such a way that would actually be a persuasive argument for that view, whether it was mine or not. So, it took a long time. It's like writing 4 different commentaries, researching each one separately.
Wow. So when you're sitting down with a commentary or any book and you're taking notes, pulling out those quotations, are you underlining? Do you have a notepad next to you? Do you have your computer open? What does that process look like?
Mostly I just have a yellow highlighter.
Okay.
I'm not as comfortable with computers as I am with books. I don't read very many books online or anything like that, but I've got a lot of hard copies of books. I buy a book if I'm going to read it, and then I highlight anything that I think would be valuable to notice again. I mean, some books don't have very much in them that I'd want to come back to. Others are loaded. And those books, my books on my shelf are full of highlighting. And then when I get around to wanting to write about it, I pull out the books on those subjects scan what I've highlighted, see, well, that's a really good quote. I'll pull that one.
Okay.
Most of this stuff is good, but not worth taking up the space, you know. And you can only quote so much from a given author's book without having to pay them royalties. So I paid out a lot of royalties for the Revelation book, although some of the authors were very generous and were glad to have me cite them, so they gave me permission for free. And a lot of the books in the Revelation book actually have passed into the public domain. The copyright is no longer. But modern copyrighted books, you can quote up to, there's no clarity in the law. You can't quote more than a significant percentage of the book, even giving attribution to the author without permission of the author. And the policy of many is to charge per word. I spent several $100s paying authors to quote them in the Revelation book, but most of them either seem to be in the public domain or they gave me permission freely.
Gotcha. So do you have a reading spot and a reading routine, kind of a daily routine, or is there a Steve Gregg reading chair in your home?
When I married my wife, she had a big house. We have a lot of rooms, and they're all comfortable. And I don't like to sit in one place unmoved for very many hours at a time. So there's several comfortable places. We've got large bookshelves full of books in every room of the house, just about, and they're all reading rooms, so to speak. So no, there's not just one. There's several comfortable places to read. I sometimes like to read at the dining room table, because then I can, in fact, spread out several books in front of me. Obviously, sometimes I spend a lot of time at the computer, but not while I'm reading, usually. After I have the highlighted portions I want. When I was doing the Revelation book, thank God, I had the technology of a pen scanner. I had to scan thousands and thousands of words and lines from other books, and I'm a slow typist. But a pen scanner, you drag it over the line just like a highlighter, and it transfers the text onto your computer.
Oh, nice.
And you can edit it if it doesn't read it quite right and so forth. But I spent a lot of hours doing that for the Revelation book. But my pen scanner got old and doesn't work well anymore, and I found it hard to replace. They have new ones, but I bought a newer one. It wasn't as easy to use, or as reliable. So the quotes I put in my new books, I had to actually type out by hand. Couldn't scan them. It slows me down a lot.
What are you currently reading right now? What's on your reading list? Do you read multiple books at a time, or just?
I do. I'm usually reading several things at a time. I mean, if something is urgent, I'll focus on reading just that until I get through it. But when nothing is urgent, I'm reading widely. You know, because of my radio show, I'm asked about many things. Sometimes a person will ask me a question that I know something about, but I'm not sure I know enough about. So I'll pull a book off my shelf and start reading that for a day or two. I've got books all over the house that are with bookmarks in them that I'm in the midst of going through. At the moment, I think, I've been telling people I'm going to be writing a small book about full preterism. And it's not that I care about full preterism. To me, it's a boring subject, and to my mind, a silly one. I hate to say that, because a lot of full preterists follow my ministry, and I don't mean to insult them. But to me, it's a very naive view. And I've read a lot of them. I've debated Don Preston, who's one of the leading full preterists in the world. I'm in correspondence with Ed Stevens and other full preterists, who's very, very much a leader of a movement. And so I'm acquainted with much of their views, obviously, and I feel like their exegesis is poor. But I before I write on them, I want to read as much, again, as usual. I want to have their quotes. I want to make sure I've processed what they say. And like I said, I don't care about full preterism that much. But the reason I need to, I feel I need to write something about it. I don't want to waste much time writing a lot about it. But I'm frequently approached by people who say, I became a full preterist because of you.
Oh.
And I think, what? I always speak against it. They say, yeah, but I was a dispensationalist, and then your teaching led me to partial preterism, and I just kept going. Now I'm full preterist. think, well, I don't want to be responsible for that. You know, I've heard dispensationalist critics of preterism say, well, even partial preterism is dangerous because it's a slippery slope from there to full preterism. Well, only if you're not very discerning, I think. Only if you don't really understand the Bible very well. But I have to deal with the fact that a lot of people who are students of the Bible still don't have very good skills of discernment or exegesis and so forth, and they do become vulnerable. So I feel almost like I have to write something on it so that, you know, if people become partial preterists through my influence, they know there's a stopping point for that process.
Right. What airline are you flying?
Southwest.
Southwest, I think. All right. Well, great, Steve. Thank you so much for. We're at the airport, so we'll just end this. Thanks for sharing your workflow and process, and thanks for all the hard work that you put in to bless so many people with all of your knowledge and making it accessible. So thanks for coming out this week.
It's always my pleasure. I'm always sad when they, like at the question and answer things last night, they cut me off after, for the sake of the audience, I think, after about an hour and a half. And I thought we'd go at least another hour.
All right, thanks.
Bye now.